key aspect of any business is thinking about what is its business model. Now this is seen now as the biggest source of potential innovation by any business is actually their business model. Not the technology, not the nature of what they do, but actually the business model itself.
And so many companies don't even think about their business models, and we know from research that often a business model normally only lasts for up to 3 years. And a lot of time people have a strategy of what they want to do, but don't actually look at their business model, which is actually fundamental to the growth of the company.
Now the business model is designed to fulfill or to answer 3 questions. One is, how do we create value for the customer? Secondly, how do we deliver that value to the customer? And thirdly, how do we capture value for ourselves to ensure that we're sustainable as a business?
And of course, what we have as a tool here is the business model canvas. It has 9 different segments, which answers those 3 questions. In the middle, you have the value proposition. That is the kind of the jobs that needs to be done with the customer and how you're going to generate gains for the customer through the products and services you're offering. That links back to the right-hand side, which is about the customer segment, and looking at the different types of people you have.
The critical thing there is that there's a space between them. There's a space of 2 different boxes in between the value proposition and the customer segment. One looked at the customer relationship. What type of customer relationship do you want to have? So if you're a hairdresser, that is very much a personal relationship. And so you want to be able to have, you need to be able to communicate effectively with your customer. However, if you're Microsoft, what you'll find is that there are no telephone numbers on their website because they want you to correspond using email and chat groups. And similarly, Channel starts to look at how am I going to take my value proposition and make sure that the customer understands what I'm doing. This is about your marketing. How you connect with your customer is those channels. And collectively, those 4 boxes represent how you create value for your customer. Because without the value proposition and the understanding your channels and customer relationships, you can't create value for a customer.
On the left-hand side, you have 3 boxes. The key one on the left-hand side is the key partners. Who are the people you need to work with to deliver that value to the customer? So the key aspects there could be external partners, but they could also be internal partners. Not just supply chain factors, but other aspects that make sure that things that you deliver can add value to the customer. Out of that process, when you talk to the customers, and you have a tool we have on looking at partnerships, but the key aspect about that is actually understanding how you work collectively together to achieve what the customer needs. So following from that will be a number of key activities that fall out and some key resources. The activities may be from the point of view of the hairdresser, is actually again continuing supply of potential new clients. And that could be a key partnership with either a supplier or could be even a neighboring business which is in a different area who can do introductions or whatever it might be.
In terms of a hairdresser, one of the key things there is that we all know that recommendations is a critical aspect of how we select our hairdresser. Therefore, it's important to think about how, in terms of your activities of the business, how you encourage people to actually recommend and to introduce your business to their friends and colleagues. Now, a key aspect of that is looking at things like social media. It could also be about how you incentivize your current customers to recommend you to others via discount systems or loyalty cards. Other aspect of that then is looking at what are your key resources. And if you're going to do social media, you need to make sure you have a good Facebook page or a good LinkedIn page which actually allows people to see what you do. Then you've got to invest in some of those things to make it a true representation of what your business actually is. And equally, if you're going to have a sales team on the ground in terms of your key activities, you'll need to have effective resources for those sales teams to make sure they're actually working effectively in terms of computers and telephone.
The last bit is about how you capture that value, and therefore you have to think about your cost structure and your revenue streams, and these are the 2 bottom boxes. And the key aspect about that is they're a bit more functional, but actually critical, because actually it's no use having a great product, and if you don't capture it, then you're not going to actually grow and have profitability. So those 2 elements we work through, linking back to those key activities and those partnerships, looking back at those relationships and looking back at those communication channels, but making sure that you capture that value for the business.
And the key thing is the interplay between all these 9 boxes. So if you look at a cost activity, one particular cost you may have, you could maybe have to flip over into a key partners box. So you get a partner to undertake that role instead of yourself, because actually there's a positive win-win scenario for both parties if you actually partner up, rather than simply say that's a cost I must incur as my business. And so it's important to start, when you actually start to fill it out as a team, is to think about, is that activity in the right box, and can I reduce the cost, or can I change it in some aspect by moving into a different box, and what does that mean for how my business model looks like?
And you go back to the customer, and again, looking at the revenue streams, is actually thinking about some of the processes behind that. So for example, online payment, big aspect of how making it easier for the customer. If it's a pain to send off a check and right away and get a mail order, actually, but if I could do that online, or now with contactless payment, or using my mobile phone to make a pay, and it helps speed up the process, and it helps actually capture more data because you have the profile of the individual being captured and shared. All those different aspects allows you to do things more efficiently, and therefore hopefully generating more profit.
The key thing about thinking about your business model is don't be fixated on your first one. You need to experiment. You need to try and look at different aspects, and try and draft up different business models to question your own assumptions all the way through the process. So really, do you finish up the business model you finish up with being the film that you first write? You want to write it down, debate it, discuss it, revise it, and keep iterating that process forward. And as David mentioned earlier, the average business model now is lasting 3 years. So you need to think about these things after about 18 months to be able to make sure that is my business model still relevant for the nature of my customer? Which means going back to your value proposition, thinking about that and saying, has anything changed? Do I need to change anything that I do as a business?
And that time's getting shorter and shorter as well, as speed becomes much more important in the marketplace. Therefore, your business model needs to be continuously updated and amended to the environment that you work in. So the key, therefore, is to actually keep thinking about the customer. And you may find you have a slight variation in the business model for each different market segment. So don't think about it as one business model, but actually think about it linking back to the customer and being customer focused.